And Medusa, Yane mentioned you volunteered to read today.
Sorry. Yep, sure did.
All right, all right. Thank you for that. Continuing to circulate the leadership. And Emily, I know, yeah, on the move, Medusa. And Emily, I know we didn't get a chance to circulate you in there reading or facilitating, exercising.
It worked out well at the end because the days that I ended up volunteering, other folks ended up doing it. So it worked out perfect.
Okay. Well, it is, you know, we have happy to have you here for almost every session, and, you know, want to do our best to kind of continue that circulating and facilitating.
Yeah. So I have the link. Did I drop it in the chat?
I don't think so. The live link.
Yeah. Let me get it again. Here's the link for everyone. Okay, you should all have it now. You have it? So I'll give everybody a second to post it. And then we can go ahead and get started. So today is day 19 of the Black August Power Hour. We have been coming together every day from August the 1st until today. We ain't skipped no days. Even the day that we operated in solidarity with Maroon, we didn't skip that day. We came together and agreed to do that in the spirit of Black August. And so we have today, and then we have day 20, which is tomorrow. We will finish our pages today, and then we will plan together for how we can use what we've learned in the best way possible moving forward on tomorrow. We agreed, those of us who were on the call yesterday, all agreed that we're down to have a 2-hour session tomorrow, with it being the last day. And so there were enough of us who wanted to do that, that if there are some who can't join for the whole hour, that'll be okay. But for those of us who can, we'll be together for a full 2 hours. And so we're going to get right into our introductions, and then we'll exercise. Raphael is going to lead us in exercise today. Woohoo! And then we're going to have the last read by Medusa, and we will process the whole book and think about how we lay the foundation for a discussion for tomorrow, for how we can take the lessons from this book and apply them to our practice. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Yane Indigo. Excited for this day 19. And I'm in Lenni Lenape territory in so-called Philadelphia. Wanted to also mention for the 21st, instead of doing us hosting a teaching, we decided to, again, in an act of solidarity, our comrades have organized a teaching and an event at the North Philly Peace Park. So we are encouraging people to tune into or join into that event. And so that's from 12 to 5 during our same hours. We didn't feel any need to butt heads with that. So I'm going to now pass on over to Raphael, who has been a co-planner and co-lead of this for this whole time.
Right, and on the move, everybody, free the land. I'm in Onondaga territory in so-called Rochester, New York. Just want to give another shout out to free all the U.S. political prisoners here and abroad. And again, day 19, just glad to be rocking with everybody for so long. So, all right.
Awesome. And then also want to invite Medusa to introduce themselves as our reader for the day.
Peace and power, Medusa, they, them, Lenape. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we are ready to get started. I have my window here with the timer, and so we're going to do 2 minutes to start, right, for our warm up.
That's right. That's right, Yana.
All right, and so I'm going to play again the Roots.
What is design thinking?
For all of us.
At its simplest, it's a way.
On the other side of this ad. All right, so we can go.
All right. Let's start off with some neck rolls. We'll start from the bottom to the right. Right, to the other direction, to the left.
Where the pressure's on in them seats, dressed party like a leprechaun. I chop rappers up like chicken Szechuan. Set a squad off like a slave pork short. They open zodiac sign, read course.
All right.
Stage, I make the
Now let's start with some body rolls.
Left
to right.
Niggas want some, I hit him with a portion. On the fifth pour some, armed at the door, son. The military dice, war quick draw, son. You don't want no more, son, that's the more come. And track a nigga, every avenue with all gun, y'all all done. Ladies and gentlemen, select the weapon at the gate before entering the room.
Right, all right. Let's stretch to our left.
Talk shit,
All the way over.
like the L60 at the market. South Philly, flip a holder to a nigga.
Ten count.
Sneaks, change their ranks and bracelets. Flip back this like we the therapist. Adrenaline, fifth
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Other direction. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, down the middle.
Transform from the norm, start the brainstorm. Yeah, Malik B from the roots, he ain't going. I took the wrong exit, the signs of language.
6,
I'm trying to
7,
win about 5
8,
worlds with live
9,
girls.
10.
Shout to all my equine whose name
All
is
right.
Lyle. The more deep voice, select
Hold your
the
back
man,
and push yourself
commanded,
forward.
taking you back like
Feel it in your
Landon,
front
I'm
thigh.
Brandon. We out, yo, see it hands, yo. With the pivot on this concrete earth until I rock. Didn't figure how to conquer it. Yeah,
7,
but still I rock
8,
once again.
9, 10. All right, if you can hold the wall or something, we're gonna grab our left leg with our right arm. Try to stretch that thigh out, the hamstring.
See me how they face like ostriches. Dice to grind the brain into little sausages. Underwater rap, you know who the boss
6,
is.
7,
Baby,
8,
that's what that
9,
bullshit is.
10.
Nigga blown out the sky
All right,
when
switch
shit
legs.
gets all get hit. 18th of our rhymes, I fathered it. So when you see me on the street, don't bother, kid. Just be on them every way, or you might get slid. Ask around, wondering what dice roll did. Play you on floors like you're getting cold.
All right, all right, all right. We'll jump straight into my jumping jacks in here. 1 minute. I give you a bad case of the fucked up jitters once again. They used to talk shit, but I'ma quiet them. Kicking the door go.
with my boys that the riot them. First nigga that flinch,
Go.
I'ma fire him. Tape him up, grip his hands and plier them. Know the bricks is in here, where you hiding them? Don't die in the shit that you lying in. I used to get fronted bricks, now I'm buying them. Used to cop off my man, and I'm supplying him. Pay the front row seat, watching Iverson. First class air crash when I'm flying in to LA. Shaq Eddie, Kobe Bryant and them. Say to Joseph Chris Tucker, Richard Pryor and them. Used to shotgun in cars, now I'm driving them. Used to hustle around bars, y'all was robbing them. Ran up in y'all spot with robbing them. Grew up 2-4 with buying them. But do my dirt 21st with Kyle and them. Nigga pop, nigga buzz, little Mark and them. Brother News, nigga School, Marley Park and them. Nigga jump, pull a pump, low spark in them. I know shit right now, getting dark in them. Tore they body all up, ain't no chalk in them. I'm too sharp for them, move out in the dark in them. These in the down foul streets when I'm stomping them. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, once again,
Right, all right. Make sure you're taking deep breaths. All right, so we're gonna jog in place for 1 minute.
Got some new music.
Here's the 3 main.
Like red, black, and green. You go
Where
1
you
minute.
at, y'all?
Go.
West side.
WRBG.
Every day, all day.
They all do.
Throw it up.
Red, black, and green. Let me see who really knows just what it
What type of soldier is a RPG soldier? Do we walk that walk more than we talk that talk? And it ain't just about no colors, cause we sisters and brothers and we rep one team. That's right, we family. And we don't fuck with no snitches. These police try to trick us, but we know it's war. That's what we fighting for. And there can't be no peace until my folk get a piece. That's why it's do or die. And we gon' survive. We rockin' permanent creases in my khakis because I'm on some gangsta shit against the government.
Take a deep breath.
Political
breath.
education, physical
And then we're gonna go into some crunches. We'll wrap it up with some kicks.
Fight to
Right?
win. Throw it out.
Crunches. Sit up. So we'll wrap it up with some kicks.
We bang for the red, the black, and the green. Ain't with no red, white, and blue, my nigga. Straight from the ghetto streets with that gangsta mentality. But we hip to this game, though, and we finna change this whole reality. Cause
Ready?
the red is for the blood that our people done shed
Go.
in the struggle. And the black is for the love for all my sisters and all my brothers. And the green is for the G that's inside you and inside me. Unified in these streets, and we gon' ride until we free. Now throw it up. RBG, revolutionary, but it's still G'd up. Throw it up if you know what it means. When my niggas at red, black, and green, throw it up. RBG, revolutionary, but it's still G'd up. Throw it up if you know what it means. If you rollin' with the red, black, and green, throw it up. If you ain't gon' ride, then step your ass to the side. We riders, I don't give a fuck. To me, a G is a freedom
No,
fighter.
you won't catch me singing no Star Spangled Banner, cause we RPG. 3 colors on one bandana. Throw it up.
All right. Check it out. The last thing, we'll wrap it up with some kicks. Kicks or punches. I say kicks or punches. Everybody remember? We'll go into some kicks.
You said kicks, I think.
Did I say kicks?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So,
right.
whatever you
Reno is heading into overtime with all new exclusive Eagles.
All right, here we go. Last exercise on 1 minute. Ready? Go.
One city, one country, one state. Some place to be nobody. Some place to be. Some place you wouldn't know probably. Yeah. If Chappelle moved to Ghana to find his peace in a rolling where the service always roaming, I'm packing my bags and going. It's a challenging act, it's a balancing act. Visit beautiful places, it's more out here than the trap. Houses in Long Island, they always found him. House in the South, a nigga barely got out. Sunny LA, remember calls with Dr. Dre. He told me, don't let the palm trees fool you, nigga, be safe. Me and my higher self, we often would speak. Somehow we lost the connection, might meet a Joshua tree. And it's been bothering me. Too many wavy women, gotta log out of IG. Can't be my age DMing, no kidding. It's hard to move like a civilian. I write the truth cause I live it, not like you musical niggas.
All right. Good job, everybody.
Rather shoot than write tickets.
stay
What
on
it
the
feel
move.
like to go get it, what it feel
All right,
like
I'll
to go
turn it
miss
back over to you,
In one
Yane.
city, one country, one state.
want to get activated.
Some place to be nobody.
Need to drink water,
Some place to be.
hydrate,
Someplace you wouldn't know probably. Someplace to be nobody.
Work out general when you got some forms around, you gotta hydrate, even when it's cold.
My dog bought a plane, said let's go to Paris. That's where baguettes are from, French bread that's long and narrow. I like the other definition, rectangular carrots. The concept of the song is rather esoteric. This girl said in Grenada we should go get married. Broke the meaning down of the Virgin Mary. And you got your own place. My favorite part of the night when you text me that you made it home safe. I'm contemplating at the home base how I'm used to breakfast in the ghetto sipping OJ. That's a picture right there, a moment in time. Before anybody wanted a photo of mine. Before the internet energy and social decline destroyed the vibe, fooling us with the headlines, keeping us blind. Vultures eat you alive, take heed to the signs. Wishing I find one city, one country, one state. Someplace to be nobody. Someplace to be. Someplace you wouldn't know probably. Someplace to be nobody.
All my time is spent focused on my freedom now. Why would I join them when I know that I can beat them now? They put their words on me and they can eat them now. That's probably why they keep on telling me I'm needed now. They tried to box me out while taking what they want from me. I spent too many years living too uncomfortably, making room for people who didn't like the labor but wanted the spoils, greedy, selfish behavior. Now let me give it to you balanced and with clarity. I don't need to turn myself into a parody. I don't do the shit you do for popularity. They clearly didn't understand when I said I get out apparently. My awareness like Keanu in the Matrix. I'm saving souls and y'all complaining about my lateness. Now it's illegal for someone to walk in greatness. They want the same, but they don't take risks. Now the world will get to see its own reflection. And the anointed can pursue their own direction.
All right.
And if you're wrong and you're too proud to hear correction, walk into the hole you dug yourself up a projection. See me in my freedom taking all my land back. They said a lot against me thinking I just stand back. I got my legs beneath me, I got my hands back.
We're going to turn it over to Medusa.
Word, it is definitely an honor to be reading today. So are we on 184 or what was the page?
186.
186. Word. During the nationalist period of the collective oppressed mentality promoted by the establishment, the movement is frozen static. This is the level of development favored by the oppressor. The artless, empty ideals of the pseudo-nation love and respect for a flag, a nationalistic song or beat, the fervent belief in a bond or organization which arises out of a thwarted longing for real community. The establishment does everything in its power to ensure that revolutionary rage is redirected into empty outlets which provide pressure releases for desires that could become dangerous if allowed to progress. At this stage in the development of monopoly capitalism, there are two alternatives: aggressive revolution, activity, or calcification. Conservative society, black or white, is decadent society. Due to the absence of creativity and movement, conservative society always burns itself out. Your letter got right at the heart of that principle. The whole idea of cultural nationalism has been all but smothered now. It was basically contrived out of the loss of community and the terms of oppressive contract, coercive conformity, and indulgent flexibility to the demands of hierarchy. But we must all realize that the oppressive contract cannot be broken as long as any sort of hierarchy exists to perpetuate the sensitized relationships of American tribalism, classism, and racism. Society is rendered impossible by such relationships. The establishment of society through intercommunalism will require that the social contract be completely altered. Clearly, alteration cannot take place unless hierarchy is destroyed. Can we expect the hierarchy to do away with itself? When the real undertaking at present is the unconditional freeing of people, we plunge beyond ideological debate before this immediate task. The Black man and the Black female must be, as I have mentally ordered things, completely joined together in the act of liberation. I accept my Black mama with all her fears for my life that border on the hysteria at times. But I also realize that it is the role of the living, all of the innocent, to discover unitary practice, and conduct and move against the institutions that close on the oppressed. Those who have more regard for their own egos or self-interest than they have for building a united progressive left, and those who abandon community altogether in favor of petty interests are in direct opposition to our real interests. They are attempting another form of escapism. They're fleeing the objective conditions of their real life and will eventually reach the ultimate contradiction of facing their father or brother or old classmate, comrade, or wife over the barrel of a gun. Or they will find themselves in no man's land, cast out by the people, suspected by their crime partners. But regarding the crisis just passed in the party, as Huey Newton reminds us, there's always a positive side to each negative. The confused resentment and reverse racism of the Black partisan will eventually lead to a new, more productive and creative contribution. Already we realize that there is no split in the party, only a defection. The party has come out of it stronger. We can now bring our strategy and tactics into realistic conformity with our total objective situation. We discussed Jonathan and guerrilla strategy in the urban situation at length over the piece of paper with circles, lines, and arrows, question marks. I guess now that he is dead and the guilty are safe from the muscle of his mind and arm, it is safe to reveal some of his thoughts and functions within the matrix of the party and the movement. He felt, as I did, that the military and political branches, though married in purpose and direction in these opening stages, should function separately from each other. For very obvious reasons. In undeveloped countries, the establishment military strike forces are not more than 30 miles down a dirt road in the provincial capital. They're always within a few moments strike. The urban guerrilla, however, can mingle with the enemy and remain invisible and invulnerable. In our present situation, there are no contradictions between the military thinking and the action and the primacy of politics. The situation allows for such activity as the August 7th movement, because it can be accomplished without giving the enemy state forces the pretext they need to move in and destroy the political apparatus under the very convenient and much used Anglo-Saxon conspiracy laws. The primacy of politics will continue as long as the military reads, picks up, and works well within the prevailing political matrix. So Jonathan's raid on the military and judiciary that Friday was at once an expression of his own aggressive consciousness and that of the party. It is easy to infer all of this in retrospect that Jonathan was head of a clandestine army which saw the Black Panther Party as its political leader. Operating on his own, he was able to at least attempt to support some of the minimum demands of the people without placing Huey Newton and David Hilliard in jeopardy of loss of movement or death, persecution in the courts, i.e. That this is our only recourse at the present level of development is too obvious to even dwell on. It will not even be possible, however, in the advanced stages of revolution. Just a glance at the present level of consciousness and the status of the survival infrastructure will reveal the error of Cleaver's analysis that no separation should exist, even now, between military and political cadre, between military and political action. You know, I sent him a message suggesting that Unitarian conduct depends on a principled discipline and submission to the democratic centralism instead of the egoism and that sent him first against his Muslims through the Sacramento Bee Pigs press that time, then against the Peace and Freedom Party, even against the progressive elements of the CP, through his unreasoned attack on the magnificent Angela Davis. Recently, he has even attacked the dedicated, overworked, and brilliant Charles Garrett. It seemed to be a pattern with the man. You recall the attack he launched against Fidel in Cuba, and those accounts that seem disparaging of his hosts, which have breached the pig press here from time to time. My personal message to him was mild, considering that he was in fact leaving his old comrades open to attack again. I sent a letter reminding him that his behavior while in prison was far from exemplary, and had that section of it signed by Ulysses McDaniel and Clifford Jefferson, two of the eldest time in and most respected Black partisans in the California concentration camp system. I then listed some of the behavioral patterns since his release, a more complete list than the one just given that did not indicate that he had changed much. I finally asked him simply to show proof now that he was not a compulsive disruptor or agent provocateur. A very mild request. I feel he returned with a very scurrilous and profane set of invectives. In short, a piece of vendetta. Tell him that 7,000 miles, the walls of prison, steel and barbed wire do not make him safe from my special brand of discipline. Tell him that the dragon is coming. The substructured prison movements are gaining momentum. My trial is set for early August 1971. There'll be hearings in between, of course. If they are all like the last, you'll get to see my special bastardized style of martial arts. I'm working hard to stay informed. I wasn't at my best at the last showing. I'll clean them all next time. Next time they attack. Attend, let me see your style. Your comrade in arms, who does not fear the death of 1,000 cuts, who dare unseat the emperor. Afterwards, statement by Huey Newton, servant of the people, Black Panther Party at the Revolutionary Memorial Service for George Jackson. Power to the people. Power to our fallen comrade, Brother George Jackson, member of the Black Panther Party. First, because many people are wondering, I would like to explain the connection between Brother George Jackson and the Black Panther Party. When I went to prison in 1967, I met George, not physically, but through his ideas, his thoughts, and words. He was at Soledad Prison at the time. I was at California Penal Colony. George was a legendary figure throughout the prison system, where he spent most of his life. I met George through his spirit. Shortly after learning about him, I got word from the prison grapevine that he wanted to join the Black Panther Party. At his request, he was made a member of the People's Revolutionary Army with the rank of general and field marshal. He was put in charge of the prison recruiting, and he was asked to go on with his life as a revolutionary example, which was the most important thing that one can ever do because he cannot be killed. I say that the legendary figure is also a hero. George Jackson was my hero. He set a standard of prisoners, political prisoners for people. He showed the love, the strength, the revolutionary fervor that's characteristic of any soldier for the people. He inspired prisoners whom I later encountered to put his ideas into practice, and so his spirit became a living thing. Today, I say that although George's body has fallen, his spirit goes on because his ideas live. And we will see that the ideas stay alive because they'll be manifested in our bodies and in these young Panthers' bodies, who are our children. So it's true. So it's a true saying that there will be revolution from one generation to the next. This was George's legacy, and he will go on. He will go on into the immortality because we believe that the people will win. We know the people will win. As they advance generation upon generation, what kind of standard did George Jackson set? First, he was a strong man without fear, determined, full of love, strength, and dedication to the people's cause. He lived a life that we must praise. No matter how he was oppressed, no matter how wrongly he was done, he still kept the love for the people. And this is why he felt no pain in giving up his life for the people's cause. The state itself sets the stage for the kind of contradiction or violence that occurs in our world, particularly in prisons. The ruling circle of the United States has terrorized the world. The state has the audacity to say that they have the right to kill. They say they have a death penalty and it's legal. But I say by the laws of nature that no death penalty can be legal. It's only cold-blooded murder. It spurs all sorts of violence because every man has a contract with himself to keep himself alive at all costs. Legally, the state can only confine someone subject to the correction at a later date. Even if the state does wrong, it could give itself the semblance of legality by leaving open the possibility of rectification. But of course, with the death penalty, with the kind of violence that we see in our community where the police are also executioners, we don't have this chance of negotiation. They have the audacity to say that people should deliver a life to them without a struggle. None of us can accept that. George Jackson had every right to do everything possible to preserve his life and the life of his comrades, the life of the people. Even after his death, George Jackson is a legendary figure and a hero. Even the oppressor realizes this. To cover their murder, they say that George Jackson killed 5 people, 5 oppressors, and wounded 3 in the space of 30 seconds. You know, sometimes I like to overlook the fact that this would be physically impossible, but after all, George Jackson is my hero. And I would like to think that it was possible. I would be very happy thinking that George Jackson had the strength because that would have made him Superman. Of course, my hero would have to be Superman. And we will raise our children to be like George Jackson, to live like George Jackson in the fight for freedom as George Jackson fought for freedom. George's last statement, the example of his conduct at San Quentin on that terrible day, left the standard for political prisoners and for the prisoner society of the racist reactionary America. He left a standard for the liberation armies of the world. He showed us how to act. He demonstrated how the unjust would be criticized by the weapon. And this will certainly be true because the people will take care of that. George also said, once the oppressor is very strong, and he might beat him down. He might beat us down to our very knees. He might crush us to the ground, but it will be physically impossible for the oppressor to go on. At some point, his legs will get tired. And when his legs get tired, then George Jackson and the people will tear his kneecaps off. But first, the state sets the scene for such violence, you see. And some people say that we can't get rid of this kind of physical conflict with more of the same. Well, I would take issue with this. We can use the example of the oppressor stomping George Jackson down to the knees. He can't go on. We will retaliate with violence against his violence. It's true that we'll be hurt by this violence, but we're determined not to let him wipe out the people. We know that he cannot wipe out the people because he will fight on. We will tear his legs off. We will tear his head off. We will take the example of George Jackson in the name of love and in the name of freedom, with love as our guide. We'll slit every throat of anyone who threatens the people and our children. We'll do it in the name of peace. If this is what we are forced to do, because as soon as it is over, then we can have the kind of world where violence no longer exists. So we will be very practical. We won't make statements and believe the things that the prison officials say. They're incredible stories, one man killing 5 people in 30 seconds. We will go on and live very realistically. There will be pain and much suffering in order for us to develop. But even in our suffering, I see his strength growing. I see the example of George set living on, of that George set living on. We know that all of us will die someday, but we know that there are 2 kinds of death, reactionary death and a revolutionary death. One death is significant, the other is not. George certainly died in a significant way, and his death will be very heavy with the deaths of the ones that fell that day in San Quentin. San Quentin will be lighter than a feather. Even those who support them now will not support them in the future, because we're determined to change their minds. We'll change their minds, or else in the people's name, we'll have to wipe them out thoroughly, wholly, absolutely, completely. All power to the people. That's it, right?
Yes, thank you, Medusa, for that read.
Thank you, Medusa.
And we have finished the book. We have read it cover to
Right, blood in
cover.
my eyes, everybody. That's right. We got
Preface
through the entire
to
book.
the afterword. And I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity to come together to read this and to discuss it in community. Such a powerful read. And so as we now have 22 minutes until the top of the hour, I'd like for us to take a few minutes to do 2 things. So one, I just would like to open the floor for people to make commentary over the book in general. Like, you know, we have this finishing section, the afterword, and the book now that we finished it. I want to give people space to just talk about the book and the experience of reading the book and our thoughts on that. And want to mention that what I also like for us to do during this time on this call today is to lay some foundation and some groundwork for our discussion tomorrow. And to do that by identifying some of the key concepts that George talks about in this book that can be translated to practical action. And so I'll give as an example the concepts that come to mind for me, and they are the idea of the vanguard and the responsibilities of the vanguard. Another is the call to, build a commune in the city. And, you know, and I'll just mention those 2 and give room for others to mention things. And there may be like subcategories or categories of things, but just would like to begin to think about that. And the reason is because what we'll do tomorrow is we will look at these different concepts and we will talk about how we can activate around those concepts, how we may refine the organizing that we're already doing, how we may add to our organizing, or things we may eliminate from our organizing in order to be better informed, or to use the wisdom that we have as a result of having read this book together. So I see that Medusa has their hand up. So Medusa, thanks again for that great read. Very much ready to hear your thoughts.
I thought we were just throwing out like concepts for tomorrow. I
You're
have
welcome to do
thoughts,
that.
but
Yeah,
okay.
you can do both. So I just wanted to kind of lay down, a few things that people can speak to. But
Okay.
anything that if you want to talk about the book, you can. If you want to throw out some concepts, you can do both at the same time, or however.
Word.
organically.
Word. So I think the concept that coexistence is impossible and counterterrorism are like some of the biggest ideas that like are resonating with me. I think the book in general just for me like kind of straightened my feet a little bit. It like maybe like strengthened my back a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I can stand a little bit taller, knowing that I'm not crazy. Like I'm not tripping. I'm not, I'm not far off in terms of what I think it takes for real liberation. And so like all of his words like hit me. And so I'm gonna go back and like be reading this again because I think like some of the things I'm sitting with, like I'm like and sometimes like the acceptance of this information is not an easy thing to just digest. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to put some honey on it to try to make it go down because if we are to have a revolutionary death, as you said, then it's going to take some unlearning on my part, and I'm sure on the people's part, just so that we can get to that point of digesting this reality of us. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Medusa. I wanted to make sure because I'm going to write these things down that I captured this correctly. What was the thing you said before counterterrorism was a concept?
It said coexistence is impossible.
Okay. Nice. All right. Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, I forgot, and then it just came back. Something that keeps standing out to me is his discussion of guerrilla warfare and the specifics that he outlines, which I can't think of them off the top of my head right now. And then another concept that I keep returning to is his description of the 3 stages of fascism, which I don't know if that's like directly applicable to like what we do, but I think that understanding of the 3 stages of fascism has really stood out to me.
Thank you. Who else? Go ahead, Jindu.
Hey y'all.
Hey.
Thank y'all again so much for this space. Like it's just always so beautiful and powerful to just like marinate on these words. And I definitely share some of Medusa's sentiments and like some of the concepts being like, oh, okay, let me see how I can process this and sit with it because, it kind of hits you in the chest. So, a couple of things that I got from the text or that are sticking with me from the text. The first is like the clarity, right? I think that there's a way in which we read like prominent, like activist, scholar people who do great work. I'm thinking like of an Angela Davis or whoever who do great work, but a lot of their work is highly theoretical. And it's this sort of abstract conception of like, how do we appeal to the people who are upholding empire in order to make them understand or whatever, blah, blah. But like, there's something so powerful about a text like this that speaks directly to people who are already on your side, right? Who already share your sentiments, who already are under have their foot under the boot of empire and understand that can't be, right? And there's an urgency of speaking to people who are already in your community and on your side. And I think that that's something that I often find us missing, especially in the contemporary sense, because so many of the prominent like activists or whatever are often speaking to agents of empire and often trying to appeal to or soften things so that things go down easier. And there's something so powerful and refreshing about a George Jackson, a Jonathan Jackson saying like, no, these are the realities of empire. These are the realities of liberation, right? Like follow us here. So that's the first thing that stuck with me. And the second thing was like how powerful it was to have a space like this and like what it means to have sustained spaces like this so that people can continue to like learn all year long, continue to meditate, continue to incorporate physical and intellectual like rigors in their daily lives and do so with other people invested in the freedom of Black people and other marginalized people. And then the last thing was oh wait, last two things. One, power of public censure. Like, I don't remember who he was speaking to in that letter about he's about to feel the wrath of the dragon. But that sort of sentiment reminded me of like BLM 10 and like folks who are calling out sort of the faces of modern day neoliberal activism in a way that's like, we're not going to let you, okay. Thank you so much, Medusa. In a way that's like, we're not going to let you get away with this. You're betraying your commitment to the people. And the last thing was fear. I'm really curious about how people understood how fear was like held in this text or kind of inside in this text. Because a lot of folks are like, we don't want to die. We don't want to experience that like violence of empire. It's like we're already experiencing the violence of empire. And that's something that came through so clearly in the text, right? Like this is a reality. It's not something that you can avoid by like putting your head in the sand or like, playing it safe. So those are a couple of the thoughts that I had.
Thank you. I think I captured all of those, so we'll just move right on along to Raphael, and then Medusa has their hand up again.
Yeah, I'll be brief.
Yes,
I think one thing that I really valued about this space, is adding on to what Jindu and others said, is being able to not only continue to work on our minds and body and community, but to be able to dissect this book in community. I've read the book before, made sense of it for myself, but it was such a valuable learning experience kind of hearing from everybody. And I think that's something that influences that need to continue to create and recreate this kind of space of political ed. Overall, when I think about the book, I'm going to continue to say this is a blueprint. And so I think going forward, one of my ideas is to continue to ask that question: in what ways can I put this to practice? In what ways can I put it to practice, be a critical analyzer of that process, and figure out how to continue to go forward. So I think I've read it enough to really understand where George is coming from, but I think in some of my activism, education, community organizing, I'm really going to keep asking this question about how to put this to practice.
Thanks, Raphael. So we have Medusa and then Jacqueline on staff, and then me, I'm on staff too.
Yeah, I wanted to say that it was really awesome to, read his criticism of Eldridge, because I've long since had a criticism of Eldridge even being in the movement in the first place. So it was good to see beyond, because I don't know, his Soul on Ice talked about how he practiced rape on Black women so that he could rape white women. And he was still allowed to be in the party. And, married Kathleen Cleaver and abused her and, was very harmful. And also then, turned around and went to North Africa. And, I'm sure the COINTELPRO probably fanned the flames of this relationship, but was sending all these letters to Huey, threatening letters to Huey. And I've had a chance to listen to Elaine Brown's even take on it. And so for me, it's really awesome and revolutionary to hear his criticism of someone who was high rank in the movement.
Thank you. And Jacqueline?
Okay, Medusa, thank you for what you just said. I did get a chance to meet Elaine Brown. I did, because I have a piece that was at La Mama Theater and various toured throughout the country called Black Panther Woman. I will say this, I respect Elaine Brown and what she's done, but she is suspect and, it's been said, part of COINTELPRO. That's all I've heard. And I'll be just real upfront honest with you with that. As far as Eldridge is concerned, I'm not defending him. You're right. He raped Black women to practice on Black women to rape white women, and that really fucked up. Okay. But he was allowed to be in the party. Okay. That tells you a little bit about the party also. And then he at the end became a Mormon and a Republican. So, a lot of things are very sketchy with him, very sketchy. I really enjoyed this. I want to put it to economical, practical use, okay? I'm part of a group at the Actors Fund that deals with Black people and economics, okay? It's really kind of interesting. And so they finally read Coates's article from The Atlantic, which was several years ago, about why we are in economically, why we're in our situation, which also deals a lot with George Jackson. I am like Raphael. I want to keep going over this. I want to see how things can be made practical. I'm very interested in programs that get people going in a direction and forming things that are practical, not just one-offs or things like that, things that are well thought through. I'm also interested in, now that we've read this, how does this fit in with Fanon? That's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
And like, I'll be honest with you, I agree with Medusa. I mean, Medusa, I'm part of several groups, several different kinds of groups, and some people who aren't even activists, you understand? So I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. So it's, hey, you're right. It's not going to change. We're not wanted here, you know, and so it's up to us to do the change. That's it. That's it.
Go ahead, Al. I'm on stack, but I'll wait till after you guys.
I just wanted to say I really enjoy reading the book, and now that we've done some of the most profound lessons that I'm taking and implementing in my personal life, I've always considered myself really a revolution of one and a separate from the system, but being here, but not even being a part of this matrix. But one of the biggest lessons I got was when he talked about the other side of revolution and how that needed to start being built now. So the lesson I'm going to take is to actually start building what it would look like, making my life resemble what it would look like with the other side, not being under this rule and trying to spread and connect to people through that. Like, meaning, how would I sustain myself without this system? How would I eat if I couldn't get this food or this medicine? These are things that I'm going to try to start doing now and spreading that. And like one thing he said, like, it's got to be different parts of groups connecting. So where maybe Yane may have been a group in a commune that promotes, you know, just taking land and using it for the people. And then I have when I'm doing my own agricultural thing where these people can connect when the time comes, but you know, the fact that he gave a blueprint of revolution that everybody can chop in and dissect for themselves, you know, I think for me, like what I can do now is actually start thinking along those terms and start living the life. And I'm not talking about as far as striking the enemy, but as far as living how it would be on the other side and try to spread that. So when the time comes, you know, I'll be ready and be part. I don't know. But I just think just reading the book and just having that blueprint of all the things he said and all the ways it can go, he just put so many possibilities, you know. I think that anybody who read this will be better off, like, and you know, applying it. I think we only can apply it to, at this point, I respect what everybody's doing and everybody's in groups or organizations, and then you got egos and all these things, but just the point of, you know, everything that we do now, we eating all their food, we doing all their medicine, and now they got this shit with the mask and all this disease and the vaccine. But if we really just take it back and you really want to separate from the system, we ain't gonna be able to start when the guns come out. How do we separate from the system now and start sustaining ourselves and then let the revolution spring? Well, that joins in as a part of it. And that's where it got my head opened up to thinking of like, what do I do now in preparation? And, you know, and start living like that. So when it does go down, because it's really, like you said, catching the people where they what their resources that they need, housing, food. And if we're not going to provide that, you're not going to really sway the people, you know. So as an example, I'm going to start trying to live like that now. I don't know. That's it.
Thanks, Al. What I want to do at this moment is I want to read through the different concepts that people have shared, and then I'll read that list and I'll add the ones that I have in mind to the end of that, and then I'll move the stack on to Jindu. So what I have are the vanguard being responsible for making the transformations that we want happen, like just the idea of the vanguard, responsibility of the vanguard. Building communes in the city is necessary. Coexistence with these systems and what the kind of world that we want to build is impossible. The idea of counterterrorism, also the specifics of guerrilla warfare in urban areas, the 3 stages of fascism, the idea that our audience is the people who are already on our side, that we don't need to sugarcoat the truth for the enemy, calling out the agents of the states that are operating as counterinsurgency or that come from our own movement, and addressing them, overcoming fear and the fear of the consequences of revolution in particular, building outside of the system, building the future that we want so that when the revolution happens, that we have a next place for people to go. The concepts that I wanted to also add to that are the military and political units and the separation between these 2 units, the importance of meeting the needs of the people, also of making the people who have confused class conscious, like class relationships, uncomfortable by raising the contradictions, not allowing them to be able to be comfortable in the system, raising revolutionary consciousness amongst our people, that being a responsibility of the vanguard, that a form of communism is the necessary alternative, and that the seizure, he also talked about the importance of seizing property from the ruling class and redistributing wealth and control to the people. So those are the concepts that we've gotten at this point. And if anybody thinks of anything else, you know, that you think really is key to the text, definitely let us, you know, jump back on Stack. I want to pass the Stack now to Jindu.
Thank you so much, Janae. I just wanted to share, especially because it's been a powerful group where we could be vulnerable and open and honest with how we feel, that the statements about like Elaine Brown being suspect and maybe being part of COINTELPRO really shifted my spirit, really like hurt my spirit as like a survivor of interpersonal harm, and you know, knowing how many survivors of interpersonal harm exist within movements and then are discredited because of like the greater, in quotes, greater good and greater goals. And so I think that there's room for us to interrogate how sort of like misogynoir can enter into our understandings of how harm happens, because a lot of like really, in quotes, suspect people do also get abused and get harmed. And I want to make sure that we're having a space where, and it's still happening, right, in human spaces. So I want to make sure that we're having a space where we can critique and interrogate and hold what it means to have a sort of type of survivor-centered healing space and affirming space, right? Because if we're abolitionists, if we're for abolition democracy, if we're moving forward to create this liberated world, right, that means, you know, attending to the harms of how even those people with, in quotes, good politics or good practices or whatever can still cause harm, and holding them in complexity as well as accountability, right? Because in quotes, good people and in quotes, bad people also get sexually abused and harmed. And so I just wanted to share that and, you know, hope that it's held. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate that, Jindu. And you know, it's a thing like that. There is this thing that hovers around Elaine that I don't even know and understand. Like, I don't really know that history, and I just kind of tend to just go around that myself. But as it's a thing that's real that I appreciate you stepping in and standing up um, for her personhood in this moment, and and her time as an organizer in this movement for all of these years and decades, actually. So, is there anyone else who has something that they wanted to share in relation to the information that we went over? Please do so. Go ahead, Raphael.
Yeah, I want to make sure I add on to something Jindu mentioned, because I think this has been on my mind quite often. You kind of see it often in movements, is trying to figure out ways where I guess we don't become so disposable to one another. And I really heard Mark Lamont Hill use that term a while ago, but it reminds me of one of Stokely Carmichael's talks at the Black Power movement. You know, if we know, for example, that certain activists have been misled or they've been tricked, do we say, you know, I guess as Stokely Carmichael would say, we try to sit down with them, help them understand how they've been misled, try to politicize them, put them on the right track? Or do we just immediately get rid of them? And I think that's an important question to ask, especially after we've read how invasive fascism corporate monopoly can be. And I guess I'm just putting it out there because I don't know, I think even sometimes with movements, people may even sign up to do what's right for the people, but at some point, yeah, they might be deceived and tricked and then start going astray. And so, I don't know, I think it's an important question to just ask when we think about movement, you know, how do we begin to deal with individuals who might carry those skills, abilities to progress the movement, but yet have been misled, tricked, and deceived? And what do we do about that?
Thank you, Raphael. And it's a, Jindo, I don't know if you might want to repeat your point. You know, I think it may be a good time to do that since Jacqueline has returned.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
My internet's really bad. Sorry about that.
No problem.
No worries. And like, forgive me if I cut out because I'm walking my dog as per usual, but no, I just wanted to say that the comments about Elaine Brown being suspect really shifted my spirit and really hurt, right, as a survivor of interpersonal harm, because there are often these sort of justifying narratives for why people experience harm, or like, you know, this person is that kind of person. So of course, like, they can't be telling the truth about what they experience. And the person who allegedly harmed them is like charismatic and wonderful and all of these things, right? And so they can't have done what is said that they've done. And I think that there's a way in which, like, we see those same things go through our movement space, or, you know, movement spaces today, right? Where like organizers will experience abuse and harm at the hand of other organizers. And this is kind of like, well, this person was sent in to divide the movement, or this person was sent in to distract, or this person is like, in quotes, bad person or not trustworthy. And it's like, you know, in quotes, bad people and in quotes, untrustworthy people get abused and harmed all the time at the hands of charismatic, otherwise, in quotes, generous and genteel leaders. So I wondered if there's room for us to really hold, like, in this world that we're building, in this free, liberated world that we're building, we're going to also have to hold the ways in which we treat survivors, and hold an accountable framework for how we treat those who cause harm, right? That doesn't mean like throwing them over the edge of a cliff, I guess, but it means holding their feet to the fire understanding that like even in quote suspect people can get harmed. And how do we actually hold that without somehow trying to like, and this may not have been your intention, but like with statements like, oh, they were suspect, or, you know, they may have been pro, but there's this sort of like justifying rhetoric for the like, not only the harm that they experience, but also the sort of victim blaming that happens after, right? When somebody's harmed, they're often disbelieved. They're often told like, you know, the person that you're going after was like prominent, so that's why you're coming forward now. We see it with Bill Cosby. We see it with, what's his name? Robert Kelly. We see it with, what's the I can't remember his name. But like Russell Simmons, like so many people, so many people, right? And so I just wonder, how do we hold with some sort of sacred, I guess, attention when people say that they've been harmed? How do we trust that and understand that in this world where femininity and misogynoir will put femmes at the bottom of the barrel and blame them for their own abuse and gaslight them for their own abuse, and I know about that firsthand, how do we hold them with care?
You know, one of the things that I wanted to say that there's two contradictions that have come up to me that need to be, or conflicts, maybe not contradictions, that need to be sorted out within our movement spaces. And one is this around holding the people who have suffered from harm in the way that we need to, and also the reality of like the ways that people in particular, like our histories with, and particularly Black men and boys being accused and then murdered, you know, for things that have not been done, and how we honor like that trigger and that worry in a way that does not diminish the importance of also caring for our community members who have experienced harm. I think that's like one kind of conflict that is being raised here that I'm seeing here that we can't work out right now, but that I think is real. And the other, similarly, when it comes to like class, the whole like cancel culture is like, where do we draw the line? Because there are people who are in our community that we don't need to bring back in. And I struggle with that as like one of the people, like the BLM 10 was raised. I'm an organizer with the BLM 10 as is Tone. And we were dealing with people who chose a state-oriented agency and chose to be used to redirect the movement and become tools of the movement knowledgeably. And, you know, so like, that's a place that like, those aren't people that I want to like sit down and politicize, right? Those are people like that I see as the way George Jackson described, like you treat your enemy like your enemy. And, you know, and so like, how do we draw and know where to draw the line? Because we have those kinds of actors in local communities as well. You know, I know people that I've organized with that are those kinds of problems that want to use the movement in order to position themselves to be elevated within the current system while claiming to be abolitionists and revolutionaries. So like, you know, how do we, and when you're pushing with them, they just push back. Like they just like want you to shut up. They don't want to be like, oh, maybe I need to re-examine my position, because they already are invested in that position because they have a plan for themselves and their own personal elevation. And so, you know, that conflict of like the difference between those people and knowing those people and how we handle those people compared to people who maybe are misled to believe that there is some sort of appropriate path that is, you know, they just don't have the politics and they're not, you know, where do we, you know, so those are just a couple of things that came up to me as a result of hearing the comments that were being made. I want to pass it to Emily, who's on staff, and it's 1:10, so I feel like we've got like maybe another 5 minutes.
I really appreciate this conversation, and I don't think I can probably add anything that hasn't already been well stated. I just think it's so important, and I agree. I'm constantly wondering, where is that line? And then, while also to Rafael's point of like not making people disposable, because people do make mistakes, And then there are people who are so quick to like write them off. And at the other end, there are people who repeatedly harm individuals and they're like given a pass. So I'm really interested in those nuances. And I'm curious about like internal accountability processes, because there seems like there's so much infighting and fracturing of groups and such a lack of like conflict resolution or even these processes of accountability. And it's really disheartening. More and more, I keep hearing women saying that they're not even willing to join an organization anymore because of the misogyny that's so rampant. And then it gets to points where like, even if people make a mistake and harm others, but they're like willing to learn from it, people just like write them off because they've had that experience so much and they're triggered and they're just like making people disposable. So I think that these are really, really important conversations, because it seems like the right is so much more organized because there's so much infighting on the left. So thank you for bringing up these points.
Yeah, and I see Jindu's point. Jindu made some comments. Jindu said, I think the pivotal point is that rape is not a mistake. It's an intentional fracturing of people's bodies and spirits. And, you know, I think even that is actually like, as a survivor, I had an incident where I felt assaulted by this person. And years later, that was my experience. I didn't want to have sex and I ended up, you know, having sex with this person. But after years of time processing and interacting and talking, letter writing with this individual, I came to realize that this person like didn't understand. I had my own things going on. So this person didn't understand what happened and what he did in that moment. Like he was cut off afterwards. He never saw me again and was so like hurt by the loss and didn't understand what he had done because of the complication of that situation. And so I just say that to say that I think that there are times also when, you know, like we don't teach a lot of times. It's becoming better now, but we have not been teaching what consent looks like to people, to young boys. We haven't taught young men how to like check in, you know, and make sure that you understand what the young woman is feeling. She may not have the personal power to actually express her voice, and people don't necessarily know and understand that. And so I think that within that there is a reality where people now it's not the same as if you drop a drug in somebody's drink so that you can get them, I mean, you know, but I do think that there are ways that there can be confusion and that there's no room in our society because we have such a punitive response to everything, that there's not room for people to be comfortable even like examining what they did, to understand how what they did may have been harmful to the other person, to be able to admit to the mistakes that they may have made in a moment without feeling like they have to now become identified as one of the most terrible people on the planet. And I think that, you know, that also contributes to it. I think that having a more restorative, transformative approach where people are allowed to come in with their mistakes and they see that they can continue to live and be embraced by a community in spite of, you know, doing any kind of terrible thing, because they can get the support to help them to transform whatever it is that made them do that thing in the first place. You know, I think that can shift some of those realities. But certainly, Jindu, I see your other comments, and certainly there are absolutely people who know exactly what they're doing. And I think just that that kind of range of realities and engagements and interactions, that we make room for that range, that enables, I think, for us to be able to have more healing and have more clarity around all these different kinds of scenarios and situations that we're talking about when it comes to harm in our communities and how they are exacted against each other. Even like one last thing I'll say, there was I remember there being like a moment where there was a man who walked in on a teenage boy who was babysitting his son, assaulting his son. And they had like the 911 call, and they had pictures of the young man's face, and he had been the older man, the father had completely damaged the teenager. And they showed the 911 call, like it's on YouTube, like you hear the 911 call and you see the teenage boy's face being ruined. And my thinking about that was like, the young man who was assaulted, the boy who was assaulted, like if he grows up and like there's no compassion in there for like what is it that our society is creating so much illness. And we have peace, Jindu. I hope this is not triggering in a difficult way for Jindu. But my thought is that like there's all these cycles of violence in this very violent society that we live in. And if we want to have a whole community, we have to figure out how to try to address like the illness that comes into our community, and acknowledge that most of the harm that it experience is coming from the way that our community has built and developed people. And we have to try to make that shift. I feel that's it's just something that I think about and struggle around in these, different situations. They say hurt people, and all of us are hurt. That's it. Does anybody else have any final thoughts? Go ahead, Raphael.
I just want to thank all of you all for sharing perspectives about this topic. It's not often that I'm exposed to this kind of topic, and just to hear it being dissected in this way. When I think about the patriarchy violence, I also believe that we males have a very important role to play. And if we look at any statistics in this country, it is males who are the primary perpetrators. And so as much as I can really embrace and value this discourse happening predominantly women, I'm also encouraging all males, all of us, to not only get involved in dissecting patriarchy as a system, but also, as I'm going back now to George Jackson, how we become an extension of those patriarchy practices of capitalism. It's many males, including myself, out there to say, oh, we good males and we try to respect women, but no, we still at the end are extensions of patriarchal violence in this country, especially when we live in a larger system where it's rarely checked. So I don't know, I think it's definitely a call to us males to start sitting down, dissecting these topics, our own role, actions, as well as what we can do to stop it. So I just wanted to make sure I put that out there.
Thanks, Raphael. Anybody else have any final comments before we go? We're prepared for tomorrow. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
I came in after, my internet went crazy again. I really think that I was talking to someone, they were talking about how their society deals with it. And I guess, they are Native in a sense. And it's almost like restorative justice, but still there's like this accusatory thing, It's like there's a confessional aspect to it and then a judgmental aspect to it. It's like, so if I tell you something that's going on within me in order to speak my truth, in order to get understanding, now you know about me and now you judge me, so it's, that's when I heard how they do their restorative justice. To me, it really wasn't really restorative because it, they're not the tools. The tools aren't really there, okay? And I think as people of color or Black people, we come from a lot of us hard situations. You may be making a good income, but your parent may have abused your mother or just very, things. So your thinking is not even all that right. I don't want to use Oprah as an example, but that's a twisted sister, and her whole background, So I think we are complicated. I think we need to be in some kind of healing therapy type of situation constantly because we are still in post-traumatic slave syndrome and everything else that goes along with it. If you think people are undamaged, no, they're very damaged. That I know for a fact. They're very damaged and don't have the tools. So that, that is something that has to be a component in it. Just people have meetings and they meet parliamentary procedure to keep things going in a certain kind of way. I think that we as a people who have been damaged, traumatized, abused, and everything else, there has to be another component to it. Not just meditation. No, it's got to go deep. It's got to go real deep, and you got to be able to do the work, be able to understand the work, and if a bunch of brothers just get together and talk, well, what is it they are doing? Same thing as a bunch of sisters. How do we dig deep in order to heal? That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Jacqueline. I would like to offer those as last words. Unless there's somebody who has something on their heart that they need to communicate, we can close. Is there anyone who has some? Tone, you haven't said anything. Did you have anything you wanted to say at all? Okay, Tone's not unmuting. So, mental health practices and trauma-informed measures need to be baked into our work. Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, everyone. So we'll see you all tomorrow at noon. For those of us who are able, we'll have a 2-hour session. We'll use the things we put together, the list we put together to guide our discussion and our work tomorrow. All right. Peace to everyone.
On the move, everybody. Free the land.
On the move.